afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wine Wednesday. I'm Kevin Addix with the Maryland Wineries Association. And each week we talk to someone who is fascinating and fascinated by local wine. And I have the pleasure this week of bringing on someone else that I've known for a while from the mothership of WineAmerica, Tara Good. Tara, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on and for telling us everything that goes on inside the political fortress that is WineAmerica.
Yes, well, I'll peel back the curtain the best I can.
So we had your colleague Michael Kaiser on last week who gave us some insight, but he was very clear to me that he does not know everything, that Tara Good knows everything. So tell me a little bit about, and tell everybody a little bit about what happens at WineAmerica from your perspective, and also what you do there.
Well, WineAmerica is, we're a unique little machine here in Washington, D.C. It's our pleasure to represent the American wine industry, all states, places that members of Congress have never heard from or heard about their wine industries before. And that's always a joy to really come in and educate them about wine in ways that they've never conceived of before. So that's always a highlight for our job, I think. And then probably the biggest challenge is then communicating that work out to the country at large. DC there's a lot of mythology, there's a lot of gossip, and everyone has their own ideas about what happens here in our nation's capital, what happens in the halls of Congress. So doing the best we can to then let people know what is actually going on, how it affects them, and what we're doing to represent them to the best of our abilities.
So I imagine you've been working remotely?
I have.
In general. So how has that changed how you get things done with Congress?
Everything's virtual. Just, everyone's been touched, everyone's adapted. No longer is it these after work happy hours and the dinners, hours on our feet going from office to office. It's all from our living room. It's these intimate talks. It's the upside is staff is a lot more available because they're not tied into the face-to-face, the longer face-to-face meetings that used to happen. But we miss that too, that personal touch and being able to bring people to Congress and walk the halls. That's what's missing. So while I don't want to go back full time, I think there's a lot of value to the virtual interaction. I hope that we have some personal interactions, even if it's just for our wine tasting every year, where we have almost 30 states represented. That's always a great highlight for us. So
everything's virtual, everyone's virtual. And yet we had one of our biggest fights over the last year. I asked Michael about this. Making permanent the Tax Reform Act, the Craft Beverage Modernization Tax Reform Act. Do you think that, was it the fact that we were virtual and able to have more people connect that got so many sponsors, or was it just its time?
It was a combination of factors. We were coming to the end of an administration. There is will across the aisle everywhere to get something done, something big done, and really help people. And the timing couldn't have been better. Locking in these tax breaks right before COVID hit was a win that no one could have foreseen, but we are so grateful to have that locked in place as wineries across the country are struggling with their finances. And then that meaning that we can then focus on the current issues that we're now working on that we couldn't have predicted, including the funding to all the grants that have been coming out and making sure wineries have a place in those grants to further help them through the crisis.
And the latest, I guess, is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund.
It is, yes. We just had a webinar today, helping educating wineries about what their options are, how to apply, and how to follow through with it.
How do you think Congress will evolve due to this? Do you think that there will continue to be an online presence? I'm excited because I like the advocacy, the lobbying side of things, but I also live in Maryland and can get to DC. But if you're a Missouri winery, New York winery, Nebraska winery, Oregon beyond, it's tough to get in. Do you think we'll have better access going forward?
I really hope so. At $300 a night for a DC hotel, not to mention other transportation, flights, meals, it's incredibly difficult for the small guys to get to DC. I want to be able to rope in my Alabama wineries. I want to be able to rope in my winery in Hawaii into meetings. And that's just not feasible as much as we love actually spending time face to face. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've gotten past the stigma of virtual meetings, and there's a lot of opportunity there for just broader accessibility.
So you brought a wine or two. Let's start with a wine. What did you bring and why'd you pick it?
I have a wonderful 2019 Vignoles from Anthony Road. They are primarily known for their Rieslings. They were poured at the White House, the Obama White House. But this particular, rather than their Riesling, I think this might be my favorite one of their wines. And I've been drinking it through the winter to brighten up the dark days. So I want to share that today. And as a backup for my red, longtime member Sokolblosser out in Oregon. This is a wonderful classic Pinot Noir, rich but light on its feet. Most recently, my husband's favorite wine. We got a case of it, and he was thrilled I invested in it.
Nice to know people, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you picked two wine regions. I was going to say emerging, but they're not emerging. We're emerging here in Maryland, but these wine regions, Oregon, known for its Pinot, and New York, where many of these hybrids originated, coming out of Cornell. Vignoles is such an amazing wine. We grow that here in Maryland. We grow Pinot when we can. I always put that asterisk there because it's not necessarily loving our heat here, but some of our wineries can grow it reliably. Tell me about just some other like highlights of WineAmerica when it comes to trying wines. Michael on the last episode talked about the congressional wine tasting and just how amazing that is. Talk to us about some of these board meetings and member meetings where we've gone around the country and kind of what the benefit of that is.
One of the best parts about those board meetings where we get to go around the country, of course, is meeting the people and the generations that have gone into some of these emerging regions that even if they haven't made their name yet nationally, you can see the hard work that has gone into building up those regions. I remember we were in Ohio together and up in Geneva on the Lake, and 3 generations building these wineries and the communities coming together to really see each other through the hard and the good days. That's always inspiring to me. My family is from Michigan, and as a kid, my mother being a big wine person out in California, when we'd go back to Michigan, we'd drive up to Traverse City and see what's new. And this is back in the late 80s. I met our former board chair, Eddie O'Keefe, when I was about 9 years old. Full circle. But that's what these local communities are all about. It's the dedication that's just wonderful to work with.
Well, and there are these forces of nature in the states that do have executive directors and organizations. You mentioned Ohio and Donnie Winchell, just as an example of just the force of nature is all that's coming to mind. But Donnie has helped to grow that industry, and it's not she doesn't do it alone, right? It's on the shoulders of all the incredible winemakers that have come in. But you look at that, and it's incredible. You mentioned Hawaii. Everywhere you go in the country, there's wine.
There is. And there's good wine everywhere. You have to know where to look. That's what I always tell people, but it's there. And sometimes you have to expand your palate a little bit, try things you wouldn't usually try, pair it with something different. But the quality is there. And something I remind people outside of the industry a lot is when I get asked, oh, I could just get a French wine, I could get Italian wine. I'm like, look, those industries have been there for 1,000 years. What you get when you get an American wine is you get the hard work of the last several generations. And that's really what comes through when we see this exciting development in all these regions.
Well, and as you pointed out, France and Italy and the old world, they call it the old world because it's old and they've had hundreds, if not thousands of years to figure it out. And when you try an amazing, it's always a thrill to me coming to the board meetings, which I hope we get back to at some point. But going to these wine regions that I've not explored and trying the best wine that I've ever had in this place. And it's amazing, the scenery and getting to know the people, but varieties that you just, maybe you don't grow back home, or certainly they don't grow in Bordeaux. So if you have tunnel vision for old world wines, you're completely missing out.
Absolutely. Old and all the varieties within this country. A standout over the years was Kentucky, which has a great sense of humor about itself in the wine industry. And I had the best blackberry wine. It was the best fruit wine I've ever had. I would have that wine with a dessert any day of the week, and I would recommend it. So, you never know what you find.
Have that wine as dessert any day of the week. So I'm not bashful. I opened a bottle, and I just wanted to show what I have. It is a Elk Run Vineyards.
Oh, yeah.
Our oldest wineries in the state, Cold Friday Vineyard Chardonnay, and it's 2014. So this one has a little bit of age on it. And what I love about it is there's oak, but it's not over oaky. And we've gone through these trends in the U.S. of having complete oak bomb wines and then having stainless steel wines. And I've found that while I love them all, I like something a little bit in between. Mm-hmm. And this is an incredible wine that I'm looking forward to having with some fish tonight. So
excellent.
Here's the Elk Run opening.
Yes, and longtime member of WineAmerica. I think they've been a member, since just about the beginning.
Back when it was the ABA, I believe.
Yeah. Right. Too many having the association the same acronym as the AVA. We had to move on from that.
So it was the American Vintners Association.
Vintners Association. Yeah.
And then was it something else in between, or did it jump right to WineAmerica?
I think it jumped to WineAmerica in about 2002.
Okay.
Which unfortunately I still think sounds like a magazine.
WineAmerica?
WineAmerica. I no longer get asked if I work at a magazine when I tell people that, but
I think that is a product hole that needs to be served. The WineAmerica magazine.
Well, someone else is going to have to take that up. I'm a little busy.
You didn't want to be an editor, a magazine?
No.
So how's that Vigneron?
It is delicious. It has that. So you're talking about the right amount of oak. And I think that's what attracts me to this. I mentioned that I've been drinking in the winter, and having that layer of oak that softens it and creates just a warm feeling without it being a red wine is something that I really enjoy about it. Now, I hate to say this, but I have a call after this, so I'm going to sip it.
Yeah. No,
The wine industry tradition of spitting. Everyone else is horrified.
But you have to spit, otherwise you're drinking. And when you're in the wine industry trying a whole lot of wine all day long, you're spitting. If you could maybe showcase that phenomenal glassware you have.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'll try. Where is the best on my shirt? I think
You can get a glimpse. That is just to show her fandom. That is a Maryland glass from I forget which event you might have come to, but
I think it was the winter.
the winter wine event.
Yeah, at the train station,
yes.
train museum.
Yeah, which is great, and that is a collector's edition glass right there.
Excellent. Proud to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this topic will probably require glass in hand to talk about, but tell us about music licensing and why you focused on that so much.
Oh, no one wants to deal with this issue. Never a choice. Always a calling. I started getting calls from wineries. That's how so much of this starts.
Yep.
And my background before WineAmerica was actually in theater. So having seen this crossover with the arts rang a bell for me anyways. And I was curious. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I understand the concept of copyright. I understand the concept of licensing, but what is going on that's making so many wineries absolutely furious? So I started reaching out to colleagues here in Washington, D.C., our friends over at ABL, American Beverage Licensees, who represent the bars and taverns, the National Restaurant Association, associations larger than ours, who might have specialists in this field. And it turns out that this issue has been around for a very long time. It is continually changing with no end in sight. And everyone told me to don't walk, but run away. And I didn't listen to them. 5 years later, I'm still working on music licensing. That's the intro story. Progress. That's the origin story.
That's the origin story, but you're making progress. So just a bit of background. Anytime a business plays music, certainly live music, or allows performance of music, they are supposed to owe royalties based on the songs that are played.
Yes.
Right. That's the premise.
It's a copyright issue. So someone owns that intellectual property, and in this case, it's the songwriter. It's not the singer. It's the people who actually wrote the song, and this is how they get paid, or one of their avenues of income.
And the frustrating, because we've dealt with it as well, the frustrating part of it is that you can't just pay the artist for that song. You can't pay your $1 or 50 cents or $5 to John Denver, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, whoever it is that you might be playing in your winery. That's a pretty diverse set list for a winery, I suppose. What you have to do is pay a licensing organization, a performance rights organization, a PRO. But again, you're not just paying for the songs that you are playing. What are you paying for?
Right. Well, in theory, you could reach out to Beyonce and ask for a direct license, and you can negotiate a contract with Beyonce for your winery. And then that would be totally legal. If her people give you a call back, that might be surprising for the $5.50 per event that you owe her. So realistically, what happened was these licensing groups formed, and there's two big ones, BMI and ASCAP. They were formed in the 1940s as a response to people playing music without the songwriters getting paid. So this middleman group, they collectively license. So they collect all of the licenses for all of these artists, and so that the business owner doesn't have to track down each individual songwriter whose music they're playing in their venue, which sounds great.
It makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense.
Right. But the problem with collective representation is that it becomes this Goliath mess. So who owns what is often in question, which can make it very difficult for a performance licensing group to say who they represent. And then the laws around that are constantly shifting as well. We now have fractional licensing, which means that money is owed to each songwriter on every track. Now, it's gone are the days where Johnny Cash would write his own music, and there's one songwriter. Now, Beyonce has 12 songwriters.
So technically, you owe all of them.
All of them, yes. Yeah. So that makes it even more impossible for the venue to rightfully pay the songwriters what they're owed, driving us towards this third-party system. What WineAmerica has been doing is putting pressure on these PROs towards transparency, towards more fair licensing practices, towards more transparent communication with wineries. But then also we've been doing the work of educating the wine industry on what their rights are, what the laws are, so that they're prepared when they do get that call. And that can often be a really scary call. And the person on the other side isn't always nice about it. And so if a winery knows what to expect when they get that call, they're much better able to navigate the system. And of course, we're always here to answer questions because it is confusing and we're not all lawyers.
Yeah, and Jim's point is a good one here, that the foundation dates of PROs line up with the early rise of rock and roll and the advent of decades of payola. So yes, it serves a purpose. The problem is that when you've got a winery that has a local songwriter, a guy who's writing his own music, and every once in a while someone he asks for a request and someone yells Freebird and he plays it, it's
always Freebird,
right? But because of that winery has to engage with every single PRO in case ever live music was played. And rather than paying, Beyonce and John Denver and Taylor Swift and the Freebird folks their $1 or $2 or $5 each, you're getting this contract with each of these organizations for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars annually. And that's where kind of you have come in this Mike Coalition and just trying to decode it and figure out how to make it a little more user-friendly rather than a racket.
Right. And parsing out what part is a racket and what part is actually legally correct. And those two things can be very confusing. And each PRO is different, and they have different operating practices, and they have different personalities. And that's also where we can help. We can't help with all of the PROs, but we do have relationships with the big ones and can often have discussions with them along with the wineries to try to get to the bottom of some of these misunderstandings, because misunderstandings do happen. And speaking up for yourself is always the first step to trying to sort things out.
So jumping as a segue into another topic, so I just poured something else that I've been dying to try, and it is a wine that I have been told I helped name, because when I tried it at the winery, Celebration Cellars is the name of the winery. They're a relatively new winery in Frederick County, straight north of DC. When I was trying it, it was all this fruit and this really sweet nose and then this super, super tart taste. And I kept saying that this wine has an identity crisis. And so they named it Identity Crisis. And so I'm not sure if I was the one that actually named it, but they're pointing their finger at me. But it's a very cool wine, and it's certainly something to try, because it's sweet tart, which is, I guess, the best way to describe it.
So I need to get that when the normal times return. I need to get that for one of the wine parties my husband and I host. We have these, it's the least classy wine party, or so we call it. And we'll have a theme, and the theme isn't related to wine. We had a Groundhog's Day wine party one time. So it could be a wine related to Bill Murray. It could be a wine about like remembering a time in your life that keeps coming back. And everyone brings a bottle, and we go around and say why this bottle is related to the theme. And titles like that always come across really well. So the person then has to tell a story, but the story doesn't have to be true.
Okay, so
an identity crisis is a great segue for a wine.
And you'll have to make up your own story of it, which is great. It's great to come up with that kind of background on it. Tell me, what's it like managing the State and Regional Association Advisory Council, or SRAC, and then describe what that is.
You were in and out a little bit, but I believe the question was, what is it like managing the State Association Regional Advisory Council?
Exactly.
Do you have me?
I see you. Yep. It's not a Wine Wednesday without a little jagged video.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great. So I'll just keep talking and hope this is coming across clear. The SRAAC, the State Regional Association Advisory Council. See, I've only had, good thing I'm not drinking, it's hard to say, is a collection of associations from across the country. We have roughly 50 associations as part of the group. And it's wineries on the state level, like the Maryland Wine Association. We also have wine trails. We have groups that focus more on PR, focus more on lobbying. So it's a diverse network. But it's really the networking that is the strength of the group. We have monthly calls, both formal, and we have informal happy hours. We information share, and they are our active grassroots arm. We're very proud of the work that WineAmerica members do in their outreach to Congress. But being able, when we have a big issue and we need all the wineries in Kentucky to reach out to Mitch McConnell, there's two associations in Kentucky that we work closely with, and they're able to rally the troops and make a very impressive statement. So that's how they really feed into our work in DC, but they feed into each other. They're able to share ideas about promotion, about safe practices. It's been a lifeline during COVID as there's so much shifting landscape. How are your wineries doing tastings outdoors? Are you offering curbside pickup? What draft language on new laws that they want to get passed really quickly? This is all possible by having all of these states talk to each other, and as an industry really lift each other up. So it's been a pleasure working with our counterparts across the country.
And I can second that. I have learned so much through the what was the State Association Council, and then turned into the State and Regional Association Advisory Council. It's been incredible being able to information share. And I remember my first couple of years joining that, and it was torture every time that I had to get up there and explain what was happening in Maryland compared to what was happening in other states. They were having a great time, and we were just miserable. We were always going backwards. Our laws were not doing well. And it was great to hear tips and figure out best ways to proceed. So I'm really thrilled that WineAmerica offers that. So keep that up. It looks like we have lost Tara. Now that might be me. Let's give that a second. All right. So what we will do is actually wrap up the conversation, because it looks like one of us has lost internet. But I wanted to thank Tara Good for joining us. And for engaging in conversation about all the very, very cool stuff that happens at WineAmerica. As I normally do at this time, I want to pitch the fact that our Wine Explorer Club has gone live. There are lots of double gold wines up there that you can try that are amazing. And I'm going to add Tara back up here for a moment. I was just wrapping it up and telling folks that we have our new Wine Explorer Club available, and our latest allocation is available, and you can buy it a la carte. But it's a great way for people to try 3 or 6 or 9 bottles that they're just not going to find elsewhere unless they're traveling all around the state. So, Tara, you want to give a closing thought, a pitch about local wine, why people should get excited about it?
I mean, if it's not for the wine, it's the people. Going out, meeting the folks who grow the wine, who make it, who are passionate about it. You learn about the local history, local geology. It takes you to parts of your community you've never been before, and of course, it gets you outside. And there's can't beat that. So that's my pitch for visiting your local winery.
And it tastes real good.
And it tastes great.
And it tastes real good. So with that, Tara, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And for everybody else, just thank you very much for being on here, watching it live, or tuning in thereafter. And with that, thanks all for joining.